Brian of Trifonic, and today I want to talk to you about how I like to layer sounds, more specifically how I like to layer bass sounds so you can have multiple tracks of bass parts that come together to make one bass line. So I'll play a little example. This is a remix that's in progress that has a bunch of different bass parts, so let me show you what that sounds like. Alright, so first thing that I want to show you here is, so here's all the bass parts. Let's just take a look at those. I'm going to solo these so you can hear them, what it sounds like. So you can hear there's a couple things going on, but hopefully it comes together into one bass line. So the main aspect of it probably is this element right here. So it's these three parts. And so what that's made of is, here's sort of a mid-range layer that's pitching around. You can hear it's pitching around, and then you've got this sort of wobble kind of thing. Also more in the mid and high frequencies. We've got our sub part here. Really the only element that's providing bottom end in here. And then the rest of these are transitional, so it's to help finish the phrase. It's like a call and response. So this would be the response if this little block here is the call. So let's check out these transitional ones. And there's one more down here too. I'll just play that. And so those all work together to make one phrase. And really the meat of it is in this sub part here that's pretty pure sound. I mean, it's mainly just you know, it's not a really bright sound, but it's layered with underneath all these other sounds that have a lot more mids and highs to them. And so these bass parts here also have a call and response with the drums as well. So here's the drum parts down here. So let's hear these together. So you can hear basically that when some of the bass parts aren't happening, then the drums will do fills and it'll take up the space, and vice versa. And it's a way that they can interact with each other and, you know, have this internal conversation, as well as just the bass by itself. Its layers of parts have their own internal conversation, and the drums by themselves have its kind of call and response things happening. So I like to have that happening on a bunch of different layers. Just as, you know, I mean, if you're making traditional music that's not electronic music, not this sort of production-based music, you know, call and response is a really prominent composition technique. It's one of the most basic and one of the most effective. And so on a more micro level, you can do call and response just within parts, within groups of parts. This is sort of the orchestration of electronic music. And then within that, like I was saying, you can split things into different frequency groups. So you have your sub bass part and a bunch of mid basses that work together. And we can also split things into different frequency bands as well within one sound. I did a video in the past on multi-band rhythmic gating. So I split one sound into, send it off to 3 different buses, and then treat each of those differently. So here I have my low, mid, and high aux channels. It's buses 1, 2, and 3 that feed into them. And so with this particular sound here, if I open my inspector, you can see, so I've got it sending to those 3 buses, and then I can process each one differently. In this case, I have the lows muted, just because I've got the sub happening with this particular sound here, and it just ended up sounding muddier, having the rest of these sounds go through this low frequency band. The way I'm splitting things now is using the multipressor. I have it working in 3 bands. There's no actual compression happening. It's mainly just I can do the split here, set the ranges for each band up top, and then I just on each bus that I have, I just solo a specific band. So you can see I have 3 multipressors, and on each one I have a band soloed. And the reason why I do this now, as opposed to using EQs, is that the signal that you feed into it directly, if you don't have any processing happening and it's split into these bands and then you recombine it, it sounds exactly the same. When you use EQs to do this, I found that sometimes it sounds a little different. Maybe it's because of the crossover that's happening in the band ranges. Maybe it's because it's not linear phase EQs. I'm not really sure. It's not necessarily bad if something sounds different, but this is actually probably a simpler way to set it up too. So this is kind of I'm experimenting with this so far, like this multipressor route. I think it sounds a little bit better. And notice that I have different processing on the band. So on my mid band here, I have some panning going on, different EQ setting. My high band, I have everything delayed by, at least on one channel, by 1,700 samples. So that's just to really emphasize the stereo image and make it sound like a really wide bass. Even though the low end part, this subby sound, is basically mono. And when I had my low channel here enabled, I have that set to mono as well. So that's another advantage of splitting your bass sounds into these frequency bands, is you can actually make the lowest band mono, and then really emphasize the stereo aspects of your mid and highs. A lot of times I'll make the mid band mono too, and just have the high be stereo. Kind of depends. It depends on the context of the track. Anyway, so yeah, that's how I like to layer stuff. And in the next video, I want to show you how I made this this particular bass here and give you the patch. It's actually an FM8 sound, so I'll show that to you, give you the patch so that you can explore with it as well.